Okay, I'm back, guys. Last part of this video, and then we're gonna be reacting to the video that she did about Vosh. Well, Vosh talked about her, and she talks about Vosh. Okay, let's go.
He's done.
Hey Meta, take a photo.
Is psychologically manipulated normal people, men and women, to the point where they were willing to kill someone. He also convinced an innocent man that he'd committed a murder he didn't commit. He got him to remember things and think that he'd killed someone. He didn't do it, but that's how.
Oh. Ooh, thank you for watching. I didn't think someone would be on here. Okay, and watch the Daredevil series. It's a really good show.
How powerful fucking with someone's head is. Christ, psychological warfare. Like it needs to be taken into account. It absolutely does.
I'm not commenting on this part because I already talked about this in my last video. I don't want to repeat myself.
It can be just as effective as locking someone up. If you think people need to be chained up to be a victim of coercion or control, then you are beyond ignorant. Okay, so having said that, there's a conversation to be had here about accountability. I know that's a big thing with you, Pearl. Women not being let off the hook for bad decisions, and I agree.
I didn't comment about this part, but I do happen to agree. Even if you are convinced into doing something you wouldn't normally do, coercion. I don't know how to say that fucking word. It's one of my problem words. There is a level of accountability. Like if you're, unless you're brainwashed. If you're brainwashed into doing something, it's completely not your fault because you didn't have any control. You know, that's something weird.
A girl who, of her own free will, starts on OnlyFans or wants to get rich off doing camgirl work, and a guy helps her with it, she can't then turn around and accuse him of mistreatment. I agree with you, but whether that's what Tate did or not is up for debate. Looking left.
And you know what? I would. Still there? Okay. Thank you for staying. First time I had a viewer. Anyway, and none of that. The if stuff doesn't really matter anymore because he might be a pedophile. You know. So that if does matter because if he isn't, falsely accusation, but still it's pretty awful. There's more coming out. There's probably going to be more coming out even further.
Less and less likely. And in our quest to hold people accountable, what would be wrong to do is ignore how effective manipulation, deceit, and abuse can be, which appears to be what you're doing in your views on sex trafficking. Everyone has free will.
You know what? I would like to think. I don't know what to think. Maybe she's smart. Maybe Pearl actually thinks this, and Pearl's an idiot, you know? Oh, you have to be chained down to be sex trafficked. Maybe she's an actual idiot. I don't know. But on the other hand, it's hard to believe someone is that idiotic, you know? To believe that that's the only way you have to be sex trafficked. But I take the gum out of my mouth. But then you hear about all the other shit that she says, and it's like, well, I don't know, you know? She could believe it, she could not believe it. Sorry, I got a text. I'm a horrible streamer, I know. Anyway, but I don't know. I would like to have a conversation with Pearl and try and narrow down the points of view that she has. And because, our Destiny and all the people have been asking, the right question, but like the boxer in question wise, I feel Destiny and all the people have left too many outs for her. They didn't drill hard enough. Damn it.
I agree. And everyone at any point has the potential to resist manipulation. I agree. But that doesn't mean they weren't taken advantage of and mistreated, especially if you have been targeted by someone very good at what they do. In that case, we recognize that yes, there is free will, but also there is coercion, and it's not all one or all the other. See, this is what I mean about Pearl's the simple.
Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I am back.
Simplistic thinking of Pearl strikes again. It's so black and white. Either someone was physically forced, or they were completely and totally acting in their free will. It's like one or the other. Well, if you weren't, then you're totally and completely free and completely acting in your free will. There's rarely room for nuance with Pearl. The reality can lie somewhere in the middle, and it would be foolish.
How old is Pearl? Like 28, 29 now? I don't know how you can go 28 years without realizing that there's nuance to things, that everything isn't black and white.
Idiotic. Like, to dismiss the power of manipulation. Well, no one agrees. This is the thing about that. Like,
I mean, does she know what manipulation is? I mean, as a child, she must have been manipulated, not anything horrible. I mean, oh, you can have this once you do that, that's manipulation on a small scale, and you just scale that up, or like she believed Santa Claus was real at one point. That's a form of manipulation, she must have experienced it. Then why?
No one agrees with that. Like, companies, governments, advertisers, fucking like all these kind of agencies, whatever, all these authorities, like sciences. No one dismisses the power of like good people know. We know how effective manipulation is.
I mean, you can brainwash people. You can actually make them do things, and then they don't even remember doing it. It's like they're a robot.
It's so foolish to dismiss it. So I'm going to now tell you a story about my late aunt. She died a couple of years ago. So, when she was younger than I am now, she met a man who was a dream come true. He was charming and clever, a lot older than her, mature, sorted in life. She idolized him when she first met him, thought she wasn't good enough, mainly because he was such a bullshitter. Sound familiar? And she was desperate to please him. He bombarded her with love and attention and convinced her to move halfway across the world to his country to get married. Of course, that was when the situation changed, and this promise of a fairy tale marriage she signed up for turned out to not be what she got. He was violent and threatening. He had rules. She wasn't allowed to drive, and he didn't let her leave the house without him. He had to know where she was and who she was speaking to at all times. He controlled all the finances, all the documentation, and all her family was back in England and so very far away. She was in a strange, unfamiliar country, and he threatened her in detail with all of the things that would happen if she ever left him, and she believed him because he wasn't lying. And he told her she needed him and couldn't manage without him and belonged to him until she thought that it was true. Sure, technically she could have walked out the door at any time. She wasn't locked up. It wasn't prison. But that's what mental abuse is. It's being trapped in a prison of your own mind because someone has intentionally gotten you to the point of being able to control you. Fear is a powerful thing. It took her until she became a mother and he started hurting her baby. Only then could she break through the control and leave for good. And I'm not saying that's what Andrew Tate did. I'm bringing that up to make the point that just because someone is not chained to a wall...
I am willing to say that's what Andrew Tate did. Come at me, Andrew Tate. I want you to.
That does not mean they are not trapped. That doesn't mean they're not being coerced or made to do things against their will. And to imply sex trafficking or abuse has to involve high security or locked doors or else it isn't sex trafficking is ridiculous. Threats, control of money and documents, and psychological manipulation can be just as effective as bars on a window. And those are the things that Tate is accused of. Now, whether he's guilty or innocent...
think about it this way, like, let's say you're like a kid, and your mom got you got in trouble. You did something wrong, and your mom was like, wait until dad gets home. He may not do anything, but the threat of it, okay, I better shape up. Dad's coming. That's a smaller scare. Maybe he deserved it, but it's the same thing.
Innocent has yet to be determined, but that's the accusation.
These are the women who work for him, the Ghislaine Maxwells. If you don't make money, we're going to have a problem. Punch yourself in the mouth until I arrive, because then I'll give you another 10, you incurable slacker. And the other girl says, I'll break you when I get there. And the victim says, what did I do? And the bottom is, you have 1 hour and 10 minutes to disappear. And the victim says, but what did I do? You're down 20%, 4 days since you posted. And she says, if Andrew looks to see you, if you posted TikToks, you won't even have time to pack. You're flying off the balcony straight away. So what does this conversation really mean? This is where this is important.
That's a threat of violence.
Might not mean much to y'all because you're like, well, when they're taking this in conjunction with everything else, the fraud element involved, the coercion element, the aspect of like lying about what they're really going to be doing there, the fact that this girl who works for Tate is saying she's going to be punching the girl 10 times when she gets there, that there's these threats of violence, the one saying like, Andrew Tate gets home, you're going to be flying off the balcony. Is that literally? Probably not, but there is some element there of threats of potential violence if you don't do what's needed. When you take that to court, and these are conversations that are happening in private, you understand? They're going to take this into strong consideration when they're making their case. They're going to be like, how do you explain this stuff? Oh, we're just joking. We're not going to actually make her. Well, then why is the victim terrified?
Now,
this is the same thing that happened with, my friend and her ex-boyfriend, the same kind of text messaging, the same kind of stuff,
Not have taken some accountability. Well, she did, actually, in later life. She said she could have chosen better, and she said she should have paid attention to the red flags and not been so naive to fall for his bullshit. Sure, okay, I'll give you all those things. Let's say she should take some responsibility for what happened, Pearl, as I'm sure is your position. That's actually irrelevant. Someone can still hold themselves accountable for choices that led them into a bad situation, but that doesn't let someone else off the hook for behaving badly. Her husband was still a controlling, abusive criminal who absolutely deserved to be punished. That is also accountability. No one seems to want to hold Andrew Tate accountable. None of his fans, anyway.
Tate moved from the UK to Romania because the justice in the UK said it was too prejudicial and they were going to come after him strong. Romania is more lax. You went to Romania, acted a fool, want to say anything and do anything and engage in illegal activity. Listen.
And that's, you hear him say stuff all about Romania. That's probably why he likes it so much, because he could get away with so much shit.
You fucked around and you found out. You got to hold that L.
He could.
Nobody told you to self-snitch.
That's not fucked around. That's not
like
fucking
people
around.
just
That's...
getting on camera and just calmly admitting to criminal activity is so crazy to me. People say, why would anybody do that? Why would people do that and be a public personality? Because some people got ego. Because some people don't know how to stay away from the fucking cameras because they head too big. Hey, listen.
But it don't look good.
Hey, listen. Them transcripts, once I seen that video of him snitching, I said, it don't matter what I think.
You know what it looked like?
I know he didn't pay his taxes. One, because he said he didn't pay his taxes.
And he didn't pay people.
And he didn't pay people.
Do you not think the women should take accountability for the choices that they made?
I heard someone else say this, but it's sort of like blaming old people for getting scammed. Yeah, you can say they should have known better or it was an obvious scam, but are you seriously going to say they deserved it and put no blame on the person who did that to them? I think it's similar if you're a young girl desperate for love or security and someone is telling you they love you and can change your life. You want it to be true, so it's easy to fall for. It's vulnerable. You recognize when someone is in a vulnerable...
It's especially true if in the beginning for a few months they were really nice and, you know, and then after, you know, you fully put all your energy into them, then they change, you know? That's what happened.
Position that not... And what that means, being more vulnerable... And the girls that this probably works on, Pearl, is they're not as psychologically equipped to protect themselves against that. Because it is psychological warfare. It's like an attack, a psychological attack. And here's what gets me. Here's what gets me about this, about like good people saying this and all of his fans saying this, okay? You guys all know how effective psychological manipulation is. Tate certainly does. He talks about it all the time. That's it. You know what's funny? All these people defending him, talking about how these girls totally chose everything they did, are these same people who will listen and cheer to Tate talking about how to mind control women, about how to manipulate them, about what techniques are effective in getting them to do things they do not.
How does anyone believe Tate, you know, would do any of this stuff when he talks about how you should do it? I mean, take the man for his word.
To do, you will all listen to that like fawning adolescent boys. He's the man. What a top G. He's figured out how to hack women's brains. He's so cool. But then in the same breath, you will turn around and say these women did it only because they wanted to and they would have done it anyway. So, which is it? Does Tate know how to psychologically control people, as you say, or all of the women just scheming whores who are acting 100% from their own free will and have no right to feel mistreated by him? Pick one. You can't actually have it both ways. Is he wrong about women and controlling people, or has he been abusing his power? Pick. The levels of cope and excusing despicable behavior and like blindly defending, not just being like, I don't know about it, but blind defense, just because you all have massive throbbing erections for Andrew Tate, proves that actually it's not just left-wingers who get emotionally attached to a person or idea and will do everything to protect it, no matter what mental gymnastics they have to perform. But everyone else are the bots and the NPCs, sure. As you abandon your critical thinking and thoughtlessly parrot everything Tate believes. The absolute state of fucking Sneeko. It's embarrassing. He's just an Andrew Tate impersonator at this point. He should do birthday parties. I heard the Lancashire Women's Institute are looking for a headliner for their yearly fundraiser. I'm sure they'd slide you a few quid for a cover of Mr. Plenty at the Blackpool ballrooms. Dickhead. Tell you what, if anything, the blind defence of Tate from so many people should be enough evidence for how easily people can be controlled. And if you don't care about the girls, how about the men he stole from? I find it so fucking bizarre how he's heralded as like one of the only people who cares about men suffering when he talks all the time about how he used the suffering, depression, and loneliness of men against them to scam them out of money and bring them to the point of ruin, some of them.
He said in an interview that, the webcam thing it was a lot of it was just therapy for men, because these women would be talking to these men and talking about suicide. And Tate talked about talking a man down from suicide. Yes, that's a good thing. But he's still taking their money.
And keep them hooked on a porn addiction.
Yeah.
Like, is that not something like utterly shitty? I'm going to link down below. The Lotus Eaters did a good video where they went over, like, from the perspective of the scamming blokes thing. So I'll link that down below. Maybe give that a watch.
I would personally compare him to Cypher from the Matrix, right? He has a consciousness of how the Matrix operates. He's been able to step outside of it, but he is voluntarily plugging himself back in, but he just wants to be appointed the head by the agent.
That scene where he says, I know this isn't real, but ignorance is bliss.
Is voluntarily plugging himself back in, but he just wants to be appointed the head by the agents. He says, I know that the meat isn't real, but it tastes this good. If you can make me a philanthropist, if you can make me some kind of king, I will be delighted. So I can rule over people using the mechanism. And that seems to be how Tate is. That's why Tristan, in his interview with Stefan Molyneux, which we'll talk about just briefly before we wrap up in a second, he says, I'm against pornography because what it does to women, but I know that all these cam girls are very resentful of men because they know that they operate in their daily lives and they will do shameful things in private. That contradiction there, he's profiting off of that. He's profiting off of the dissolution of healthy relationships between men and women and still selling masculinity. He is appointing himself the paragon. Meanwhile, he's immiserating a total class of men. And so I don't think he is the person we should look to as a savior, totally regardless of the criminal charges that come out.
He's just terrible. He's just a terrible human being. But yeah, what I want to know with Pearl is, like, what did you think of Cardi B robbing men? I mean, I think that's terrible. Because Andrew Tate isn't any better. But maybe only women have to be held accountable for their actions. Okay. Oh no, that doesn't. No, you. Sorry, forgot who I was.
I don't know much about Cardi B.
Yeah, one.
Nobody's coming in to save you, to help you get better. Like, you need to do it yourself.
Unless you're a woman, you can just marry a guy.
Unless you're a what? Exactly. So
someone always will.
I want to get your guys' take on
or someone bad will manipulate you into thinking that they're here for you.
You can agree to sex trafficking.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You can agree.
We are going to go over common pieces of career advice that job seekers get.
Pearl, I want to get your advice on what
I'm the most empathetic. I'm so empathetic.
Ah, yes. Empathy. Pearl, I think out of all your feminine qualities, this one is my favorite.
I'm putting myself in these girls' shoes. I get a boyfriend, right? And the boyfriend convinces me to do cam work. That was my decision.
That's great that you think that. That's
personal decisions, personal responsibility.
That's great that you think that.
Can you not cut me off? Can you not cut me off? Like, I'm just tired of, like, we're going to blame the men for your poor decision. You picked to do it.
That's great that you feel that way, but it's still sex trafficking. Your personal feelings don't matter.
I know you're a big advocate of women having more humility, Pearl. So how about you start us off? A little humility wouldn't be out of place here. I'm starting to think your obsession with making sure women are held accountable might have more to do with lauding your own virtue over other women than it has to do with actual fairness.
Sorry, I'm not talking about that. The fact, she lacks about sex trafficking that makes me angry. And it makes me angry. The fact that she can laugh talking about these subjects makes me angry in the worst kind of way. I would like to have a talk with her, understand her point of view. I don't know.
Are not being fair. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having blessings in life, and it would be wrong. It would be wrong if someone were to resent you for that. But there is something wrong in the arrogance of putting all your success over others down to purely yourself. I would like
to have an actual conversation with someone that had been sex trafficked, like what Tate did to those women. Like her to, that would be great. I don't think she could sit next to her, look in her eyes, and say, you did it to yourself. I don't think Pearl could do that. At least I hope she couldn't.
And ignoring all the head starts you were given. You had people who loved you and supported you and made it so that you were never psychologically vulnerable enough to become a target. And if you hadn't have had that, maybe you would have made all the same decisions they did. Maybe you wouldn't have done, but the point is, you don't know.
Why is it wrong if I get somebody in a relationship with me and then I'm able to flip that into them working as a prostitute for me?
You freely chose to do it. I just think there's nobody, I couldn't date a single guy that could make me want to do that.
You're not better than them, Pearl, because you believe there are no circumstances which could have led you to that choice. As myself, I wouldn't do it either. Not ever. But if I'd had another starting point in life, another family, less security, less love, who knows what I would choose. Maybe I would have enough about me to see through it or say no or not be manipulated, but maybe I wouldn't. And that is a mystery I will never know the answer to. There, but for the grace of God, go I think you could do with remembering that. I'm just asking for a little self-awareness, gratitude, and some goddamn compassion, that's all. Also, you don't know because you've not been the target, as far as I'm aware, maybe you have, but of a very experienced.
If I totally hope Pearl hasn't been the target of sex trafficking. One, because it's awful, and two, because it would make her look even more awful because she wouldn't have learned anything from that experience, you know?
Psychological manipulator who knows what he's doing.
Maybe she was and didn't know it, you know? I need to cut my hair better. Don't do a good job.
Doing, knows how to manipulate people. So there's that other factor that even in this situation where you are now, you don't know. Maybe you wouldn't be manipulated, or maybe you would.
Do you not think the women should take accountability for the choices that they made?
Yes, the left wing has a tendency to absolve people of personal responsibility far too often and seem to want to blame everything on society. But the right seems to put everything on personal responsibility and discount other factors. So here I am with my dickhead enlightened centrist take again. God, I'm so evolved. But obviously, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Both nature and nurture have an effect, and it's idiotic to totally...
And the thing is, I think more people should... I think that you should... This isn't some fucking profound thing. I think you should always weigh both sides, you know? Even if you think they're wrong, even if your first thought is that's wrong, it's wrong, you know? You should be like, okay, what are they saying? What are they thinking? Is that right? Yes or no? You know? And then that's how you do it. That's how I try to do it, at least.
Discount either. And at the minute, Pearl, I'd say you've crossed way too far into personal responsibility is the answer to everything, which is very nice to believe from where you're sitting. Yes, we hold people accountable. And of course, anyone can always change their situation and make good choices, no matter how difficult it is, and people are judged on their character and talents. Yes. But let's not pretend for a minute that everyone has the same starting point. Let's not be without empathy for harder situations and compare them to our own. And I bloody well know you've had it easy. That's not me saying that. You say that all of the time. You constantly talk about how easy your life has been, like I said earlier, so therefore all women must have it easy. And I am shocked at your sheer bloody self-centeredness and hubris. Total inability to...
Hey, at least you understand. At least you understand why she has this point. Some people, you just can't figure out why they think the thing they do. You know, at least she has a reason to think the thing she does. You know, at least there's some kind of. At least there's a reason for it. Sometimes there isn't a reason, and that's even worse.
To see beyond yourself. You talk all the time about how much you value your family, how you have a good father, and also how extraordinarily wealthy you were growing up. And it's so arrogant to discount that as a factor in why little Miss I Make Better Choices may have found she's had an easy life. If I'm honest, and you know me, I never want to speak too harshly of anyone, But I have to say, you're coming across as a harshly of anyone. But I have to say, you're coming across as a spoilt, pampered, overindulged little rich girl, utterly blinded to all of the advantages given to her, and it makes you look very foolish. It's been so easy to always do the right thing, and if I didn't make poor choices, why should I care or feel bad for those who did? These hoes did it to themselves. Why should I have sympathy for their poor decisions? Tell me why I should care. You sound like Scrooge. Are there no workhouses? Actually, you know who you reminded me of with this pearl? Have you ever seen an Inspector Calls? Cracking little play. The BBC did a good adaptation of it a few years ago. You should watch it. So anyway, there's this scene where a fallen woman goes to a charity board for help. It's a charity one run by wealthy women promoting traditional family values. And rather than show any compassion for all the ways in which this young lady didn't have any of the advantages with which they had been so generously blessed, or indeed any sympathy for how she had been mistreated by those around her, they took the opportunity. And tell me if this sounds familiar.
1 second. Sorry. Hold that. Cancel. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway,
They took the opportunity to give her a smug lecture, said if she had been foolish enough to make such decisions, she deserved all she got because they'd never engaged in such behaviour or fallen prey to unsavoury characters, because they're not dumb. And then they threw her out because rule 2 of wife school is you got to dab on these hoes. Maybe you are right, and these women who worked for Tate...
Yeah, be the alpha... Sigma, Figma, gotta be the alpha Figma female, you know? You gotta get that skibbity riz up in there. Dab on those hoes.
are all scheming little whores who were fully up for it, who were in no way coerced, deceived, or manipulated, and who didn't have money stolen from them. Maybe it is all on them. You could be right. Yes, miracles can happen. But man, do you have fucking terrible opinions on sex trafficking in general.
Like, why is it bad for men to want to strive to have 20 supercars?
Because because putting you in a mindset where you think that material things are going to improve your life, like spiritually, or improve your life in like a holistic, like psychological sense, is just
okay. I was gonna disagree with him there, but I think mentally I'll feel better, you know, having my giant pirate ship that I want and, you know, being able to eat the foods I want, but that's because I'm in a better spiritual place. But that's not going to help me if I needed to get to a better spiritual place, or if I do need to get better to a better spiritual place. I don't know if I do. Maybe I do. I just don't know it, you know. But if I do, that stuff wouldn't help me. It would help my mental. It would help my mental. I'd be able to get all the stuff I want, you know, better equipment, better setup, you know, all this stuff. But yeah, I agree with him.
it's a path that I've watched so many people go down before.
Cope of what?
Where are the videos showing that, like, if you live like a fulfilling life, this is what awaits you at the end? Maybe it's a happy marriage. Maybe it's like good friendships. Like maybe it's like a family that you love and care for. Maybe it's like participation in your community.
Yeah, but if you're talking to an 18-year-old kid, what's your family? What are you talking about? They want to fucking get laid and get paid.
Sure,
that's it.
fine.
You sound like a girl.
If get laid,
He sounds like a girl.
That's like what girls say.
Are you?
I fucking cannot with
See?
Pearl at this point.
He sounds like a girl.
That's like what girls say.
She cannot stop attacking women. They were talking about people in general, and she drags it back to women, you know? I think she actually does just hate women. Something deep inside her. She hates every other woman.
Are you?
I fucking cannot with Pearl at this point. She is a teenager. She is a teenager. She is a teenage girl trying to embarrass a boy in the class by making a bitchy little comment. Are you seriously laughing at him because he thinks a good marriage, love, and a community make you happy? What mental age are you that you think that's embarrassing to admit? This fucking nerd thinks marriage and a community will make you happy rather than a sports car. Sounds gay to me. No, he doesn't sound like a woman. He just sounds like an adult. Jesus Christ, this is fucking childish. Why are you trying to humiliate him over that? If you know the thing, if Andrew Tate had said that, you would think he was so wise. Like, yeah, he's so wise. The Matrix be coming for him. They'd be coming because he'd be promoting family values. They'd be out here lying and saying he's disrespecting women when actually he'd be promoting the.
You know, she'd probably right. Pearl only looks out for herself. She doesn't have any real morals. You know, she doesn't draw a line in the sand and say no further. You know?
The traditional family. These hoes, these whales should listen to Andrew Tate. But a leftist says it, so he sounds like a girl. You are doing my head in, love. It's just funny that red pill women constantly talk about how other modern women are entitled, bitchy, pampered, self-obsessed, and unable to empathize with an experience outside of their own. Yet these women demonstrate those qualities more than any woman I've come across in a very long time.
Everyone has a ritual. That small thing.
This is where I think red pillars are just dead wrong. Pearl 2, they just seem to have the most shallow understanding of femininity. Like, from what I can see, it's, oh, sweet, compliant, submissive, smells and cleans. Are you dumb? Actually, don't answer that. I am sick of the constant fucking flawed assumption of a starting point that femininity is submission. That now seems to be taken for granted with red pillars, as if the conversation is over. It's decided, there's just... No. I think you have a flawed premise. And that's why this is such a mess. I'm not going to go over it now. I've kind of talked about this quite a lot in quite a lot of other videos, and I plan to talk about it more in the future on what I think femininity is or means. But so my dad said something interesting during that conversation we had where I interviewed him for the Rolo video, and this didn't make it in there. But we were talking about, we were talking about masculinity and femininity as like deeper forces from a spiritual perspective.
I don't know. I grew up around strong women. Like my 60-year-old aunt wanted to do everything by herself. So did my 80-year-old great grandma before she died. She insisted on just being out in the yard, cutting her own plants, doing all this stuff. So I don't know much about. I get that it's more traditional. I don't know. I don't like locking things down, especially as I don't like locking down a group of people into a certain set of traits. If I had to, I would. I don't want to.
And I asked him how he would sum up what he would boil the essence of femininity down to, and he immediately described it as absorbent, was kind of what he said. And I was immediately like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't have time to go into it now. I can't go into it now. Probably a video for another time. But yeah, I don't think he's wrong. There's, anyway, but not.
You know what? Absorbent. What would I say? I would say grace. I would say grace.
Submissive. And there is a distinction there, a subtle but very important one. If you want to label it submission, then that's a conversation. That's a conversation of the deeper sense of the word. But this shallow view, submit, it's so annoying. I don't think that submission is about, also, if you are going to talk about it femininity. I don't think that it's in regards to the relationship with masculinity. If you were going to talk about femininity in those terms, femininity can exist on its own as a force, which necessarily makes it something other than its essence being defined by being dominated by the masculine. It's so stupid. If there was ever any deeper truth in that, in any way, shape, or form, I'm no longer even interested in having that conversation, because as far as I can tell, a big chunk of red pill people use the word submissive synonymously with inferior, less intelligent, less complex, and less human. And they throw it out there as a conversation ender that means women should just shut up and know our place and do what we're told. It's just become a way to crap on women and use as an excuse that they should have everything their way and not have to compromise on anything because, oh, women submit. The reason for all these gender problems is that these dumb hoes won't submit. Why won't they just submit? Everything will be solved if they would just submit. And if there was ever some form of truth in equating femininity with submission, that is absolutely and bloody well not it. This is where the obsession with submission is ridiculous, because all they end up doing is equating.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Order following with femininity. For a group of people who talk about how society is being conditioned and controlled, you sure seem to have a weird interest in programming order following into half of the population. Fake news, psyop, deep state propaganda. No, but seriously, order following ain't it. This is just ridiculous. If that was femininity, then why are so many of the red pill women promoting traditional femininity, not demonstrating many positive feminine traits from what I can see beyond behaving like teenage girls? If that's what femininity is, then why do I see very little in them that I would want to emulate? You know who I
wish? All of the women I've grew up around with have been older, and they always been very dutiful, very strong, very like they've gotten shit done, you know? And like I think, yeah, definitely agree.
Was a more mainstream female voice in the culture.
It's hard to explain because most of the women I grew up around weren't as feminine. You know, they were more getting your hands dirty kind of stuff.
Who I wish had her own podcast or something. Louise Perry. She talks about some of the same stuff as Red Pillars, about what's more likely to make women happy, about the pitfalls of the sexual revolution. Like Pearl does, she advises women to stay away from certain types of men. She writes like she values women for what they are. She talks about the value of men and that we do need them and we need each other and to work together. But she doesn't have to shit on women or shamelessly pander to men in order to do so.
You know what? I've thought more about it, and absorbent is the right word, because absorbent and graceful. Because I feel like all the women I've grown up, I get the two words, but all the women I grew up with have had to, absorb a lot, if it's not from the job, from life, but they've always done it with a certain amount of grace, and that's very admirable. So I would agree with that.
I was going to do a more in-depth video on her book that I never got around to because I love the book and I think she's amazing. But I will say this. Why is it that she, who doesn't advocate for female submission and male dominance, who doesn't equate being feminine, who doesn't advocate for, But I will say
Okay, the case against the sexual revolution. I will read
this.
that.
Why is it that she, who doesn't advocate for female submission and male dominance, who doesn't equate being feminine with being obedient, why is it that she somehow demonstrates positive femininity far beyond anything I've seen out of the women in the red pill space? Is it, perhaps, that what makes a good woman goes far beyond submitting to your husband? Is it, perhaps, that the nature of femininity is not about sodding obedience or doing what you're told? Is it, maybe, that femininity runs deeper and richer and wiser than what I see so many people reduce it down to? Louise Perry probably wouldn't appreciate being compared to other women because she's classy. But I'm sorry, I'm going to do this anyway because it's just such an important point. Yes, I am. I am going to pit these women against each other, but it's got to be done. I'm about to simp now, but this simping has a purpose. Now, obviously not knowing her in person, I could be dead wrong, but how she comes across in interviews is incredibly feminine. She's soft-spoken, gentle, charming.
That's the difference between all the women I know. They're not soft-spoken, I suppose.
I understand she recently became a mother. She seems very sweet, intelligent. I'm sure she's delightful to be around, and basically on that level appears to embody what red pillars are constantly banging on about how women should be. But she doesn't disempower herself to do it.
But I don't know. Like, I think the other way out, my aunt, my great grandma, were never, they were never soft spoken. They were more like, but it's never in like a bitchy way. It's very much like in a talking on your level kind of way, But I don't know. It was like talking to a guy, It's hard to explain.
She doesn't present herself or women as lesser.
Her gender would never about her gender. The fact that she was a woman never made anything she said less impactful,
She also appears to have integrity and inner strength and say what she believes to be true without pandering to a specific group and even knowing that it would piss her political side off. Like Pearl, she also talks about how damaging the sex industry can be for women and how it's probably a bad decision to make, but she doesn't do it with this disgusting holier-than-thou attitude. She writes and speaks about this with such compassion and empathy for men and for women, and totally understands what leads people down those roads. She is far more likely to appeal to women and get them to listen to her. By the way, if you were wondering. Pearl can talk about traditional femininity all she wants, but from what I see, she has very little compassion or empathy, doesn't seem to even like women very much, and from where I'm sitting, doesn't particularly look like she's acting with others in mind. She seems to think femininity just means agreeing blindly with all the men's and dabbing on hoes and wearing pearls. I mean, okay. You want to talk about femininity being about service? About women, serve men, Okay, talk about femininity being about service. Obviously, I think all people should live in service, actually. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Let's not go off track. We want to talk about femininity, but about service. How about working in a grape crisis center and then speaking about topics feminism deems taboo because you value the truth and are defending the vulnerable? Having enough strength to go against so many of the leftist views of your own team, yet also not unquestioningly just sliding into another ideology because you're a genuine free thinker, because you have integrity and values and courage. I can't imagine Louise Perry sitting through someone's traumatic story, not really listening, and then exploiting it with a trashy headline. I can't imagine her making bitchy little videos about how this woman doesn't love her husband because she's not a wife in the way I think she should be. I can't imagine her lowering herself to such bitchy, trashy behavior. And I certainly can't imagine she'd show such ignorance and lack of compassion when talking about potential human suffering. She has such quiet dignity and isn't insecure enough to flex how much better she is than other women. Maybe because she is a woman and not a little girl. If you can't tell, I'm a very big fan. A little bit fawning of me to go off like that, so I can only apologize. But I did it to make a point. Pearl demonstrates none of the behaviors she so publicly supports. I think she'd rather spend her time dabbing on all of the modern women in order to present herself in a better light. So if she wants to pit herself against other women, I'll do it for her and say she does not measure up. It's not even close.
Oh, I need to see the conversation between Pearl and the Observer.
Maybe the reason you keep
Or observe that competition.
trying to rob dignity from other women is because you don't have any of your own, Pearl. The Red Pill does not understand femininity. They do not value it. They don't embody it. And I think they're creating far more resentment and problems between the sexes than they are solving. And that's a shame, because they raise some important things along with all the crap. But loads of people won't want to listen to it now. Anyway, that's the end. As I say, there is a follow-up video because this was going to be one video and then it obviously turned way too long, but I'm focusing on another creator who, it's a similar... I've had enough of certain representations of femininity online and the whole everything that's happened with Tate and some people's behaviors in shocking, gross. Stay tuned for that. If you want to hear more, you can sign up for Patreon. It's recent, it just started, but there are clips from longer videos that are cut out. Long videos, the more unedited chats, people. Yeah, you can head over there and see what it's all about. But there is more content, more discussions and stuff about that on Patreon. So, anyway, take care and look after yourselves.
In the past at college, I've struggled with overusing the same words again and again in my essays. I do a lot of writing.
Okay, yeah. Subscribe to me. Subscribe to Pearl. And have a great night. Thank you. I'll be talking about the Vosh thing tomorrow. Bye.